Please check that your video settings are correct in the lower right-hand corner of your video screen. This is a demonstration on how the DMX chart functions in a real-world scenario. For a more detailed explanation of how to use anything within the DMX chart, please see the Help tab located in your list of tabs, which is your navigation bar. The Help tab has detailed videos of everything within the DMX chart. Act 1 demonstrates how to input 10 different fixture types into the DMX chart from the Input tab. Act 2 demonstrates how the DMX chart manipulates the data in the Fixture Type Schedule tab, the DMX Use tab, the Channel Check tab, and the DMX Controlled Fixture Types tab. This is Act 3. It demonstrates the Work Notes tab, the Cue Sheets tab, the Focus Charts tab, the Vendors Rental Gear tab, and the Paperworks tab. As always, thank you for watching. In your list of tabs, which is your navigation bar, you will find the Work Notes tab. The Work Notes tab houses your daily work notes and your channel check work notes. To start a list of work notes from problems you encounter from your daily operations or from tech rehearsals, simply fill in the information in this box when you encounter them. For example, using the Fixture Type Schedule, you start ringing out your movers on the apron stage left. You notice that the lamp on the VL3500 spot won't strike. So noting its channel and dimmer number, you can now document the problem on the Work Notes tab, making it known to your entire crew. The channel is 245, the dimmer is 4609 through 4639, and the position is the apron stage left. And now in the text box we can enter in its problem. The VL3500 spot won't strike. Then click on the Save button so we can start our Work Notes list. The Work Notes list comes with two edit functions. The first is a Strike Through button, which allows you to indicate a problem was fixed. And the other is a Delete button, which will delete the problem off the list. The Channel Check Work Notes is unique only to the interactive channel check on the Channel Check tab. For more detailed information on how the Channel Check tab interacts with the Channel Check Work Notes, see the Channel Check video found under the 3 spreadsheets that is listed in the Help tab. When you click on the Report Problem button on the Channel Check controls when running an interactive channel check, the DMX chart throws that channel's data into this box so you can describe its problem in more detail. That is the only way to document channel check problems from the interactive channel check controls. You cannot enter channel check problems directly from the Work Notes tab. You can only edit the Channel Check Work Notes list. The Channel Check Work Notes list comes with two edit functions. The first is a Strike Through button, which allows you to indicate a problem was fixed. And the other is a Delete button, which will delete the problem off the Channel Check Work Notes list. On your list of tabs, you will find Cue Sheets. The index of cue sheets are for lighting cues, spotlight cues, and deck electrician cues. Let's look at Show Name B's lighting cues. You can select it by clicking in the index or by clicking the collapsible lighting cue sheet. Here it lists the electric cue numbers and their descriptions. You can edit each cue number or delete each cue number. To add cue numbers to the list, simply type in the number and its description, and then click the Add Cue button. Your new lighting queue number will be added to the queue list. Let's look at the Spotlight queue sheet for show name B. You can get there by either clicking on the Spotlight queue sheet in the index or by clicking on the collapsible title for the list. Here it lists the electric queue number along with the Spotlight queue number, the Spotlight number, and its gel frame data. There's edit buttons for each Spotlight number, edit, and delete. Let's add another Spotlight to show name B by clicking on the Add Spotlight button. This opens a dialog box where you can answer questions about the new Spotlight number. We're going to add a Spotlight number 2 and give it a highlight color. Next, we answer gel frame data by selecting a color. Frame 1 is Lee 201, so we scroll to Lee 201 and click on it. Rinse and repeat for frames 2 and frames 3. Frame 2 is Roscoe 33, and frame 3 is Roscoe 10. Once you're happy with your answers, click on Add Spotlight to add it to your show. If you need to make changes, for example the highlight color, simply click the Edit button. It will throw your data back into the Edit dialog box where you can make any changes. Then click on Update when you're done. To add Spotlight queues, click on the Add Spotlight queue button and enter in the electrics queue number the spot queue is around, then the actual Spotlight queue number. So on LXQ5 is spot queue 2. Then click on the Add Spotlight queue button to add the queue to the list. Then we add a description of what the Spotlight queue does. On Spotlight number 2, we click the Edit button, which brings up a dialog box where we can enter in the description. The last feature on the Spotlight queue sheet is Move Column. If you're Spotlight number 2 and you wanted your queue list next to the actual queue numbers, because it's easier to read that way, simply click on the crosshair and drag it there. Let's now take a look at the Deck Electrician's queue sheet. You can get there by either clicking on it in the index or clicking on the collapsible list title. The list shows the electric queue number, the deck queue number, the deck queue description, and edit buttons, edit, and delete. To add a new Deck Electrician queue number, answer the questions in this dialog box. It is not necessary to answer the LX queue number as it is there just for your reference. Enter in the deck queue number and its description, then hit the Add Queue button. The new queue number will be added to the Deck Electrician's queue sheets list. In your list of tabs, which is your navigation bar, is the tab for focus charts. For every fixture type you enter into the DMX chart, it will also list them here by position and unit number, then its description. Clicking on the Edit button for a unit number brings up a text box where you can enter in the description of the focus. In your list of tabs, which is your navigation bar, you'll find the tab for vendors and rental gear. The vendor form and the rental gear form are both collapsible. Your vendors list will begin here. Each vendor name has edit buttons, edit, and delete. To edit a vendor name, simply click on the edit button. This will throw its data back into the vendor form where you can make your changes. Then click the update button when you're done. To add a new vendor to your list, simply fill in the vendor form and click on the Add Vendor button. To see your vendor's information, just click on the vendor name in the list. To add rental gear to your list, simply fill in the rental gear form. Select the vendor from the drop-down menu. This list gets made from your vendor list. Once you have selected your vendor, enter how many and of what you rented. Then for how long and the invoice number. You can add an image if you wish from your computer here. And when you're done, click the Add Rental Gear to add it to your list. Each line on your rentals list comes with 3 editing functions. The View button will allow you to view your image you have associated with this rental. The Edit button will throw the line's data back into the rental gear form where you can make any changes. And when you're done, click on the Update button. And finally, the Delete button, which will delete the line off the rental gear list. On your list of tabs, which is your navigation bar, you will find the Paperwork tab. This is where you go when you want to print anything in your chart. It does not include the DMX Controlled Fixture Types tab because you can print directly from that spreadsheet. At the top of the list of the things that you can print is a place for you to add a watermark. Simply type in what you would like it to say, then select what you want to print. Let's take a look at the print functions for the Fixture Type Schedule. Now you can see our watermark we named Preload In. And here it lists every position that you have data in. Let's take a look at the 4th electric. And mousing down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen will bring up the standard print and save functions. Going back to the Paperwork tab, let's take a look at the paperwork for the channel check. Here it will list the channel checks by show name. Let's take a look at the channel check for show name A. This lists your channels from lowest to highest. And mousing down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen brings up the standard print and save functions. Going back to the Paperwork tab, let's take a look at the paperwork for the gobo list. Here it will list all conventional gobos and all moving light gobos that you added to your show or shows from the Input tab. And mousing down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen brings up the standard print and save functions. Going back to the Paperwork tab, let's take a look at the paperwork for the color cut list. Here it will list all the conventional gel color you added to your show or shows, so you can pre-cut your gel before you load in. It lists by color the fixture type, the gel color frame size, and the count of how many gel color cuts you will need. And mousing down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen will bring up the standard print and save functions. Going back to the Paperwork tab, let's take a look at the paperwork for the inventory of the fixture type counts. Here it will list a count of every conventional fixture type and every DMX controlled fixture type that you entered into your chart from the Input tab. It will also list any rental gear you have added to your chart from the Vendors and Rental Gears tab. And mousing down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen will bring up the standard print and save functions. Going back to the Paperwork tab, let's take a look at the paperwork for the work notes. Here it will list the work notes and the channel check work notes. And mousing down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen will bring up the standard print and save functions. Going back to the Paperwork tab, let's take a look at the paperwork for the custom scrollers. Here it will list all custom scroll strings you entered into your chart from the Input tab. It will list how many times it is used and by what fixture types, and then the custom scroll string name. If you have defined the scroll string in the custom scroll string library, it will list the frame and the color here. If you have not defined the scroll string in the custom scroll string library, the DMX chart will list it as not defined in the custom scroll library. And mousing down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen will bring up the standard print and save functions. Going back to the Paperwork tab, let's take a look at the paperwork for the spot color. Here it will list the spot color by show name. Let's take a look at the spot color for show name B by clicking on its name. The DMX chart gathers the spotlight color when you define it on the Spotlight Cue Sheet under the Cue Sheets tab. Each time you add a spotlight to the Spotlight Cue Sheet and define its gel frames, the DMX chart will also list it here in the spot color paperwork. Any changes you make to the spotlight color in the Spotlight Cue Sheet will also be reflected here in the spotlight paperwork. And mousing down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen will bring up the standard print and save functions. Going back to the Paperwork tab, let's take a look at the 3x5 index cards. Here it will list by position each individual fixture type that is listed in the Fixture Type Schedule, both conventional and DMX controlled fixture types. And mousing down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen will bring up the standard print and save functions. Clicking on the Print button brings up a print dialog box where you can specify the print parameters. Make sure you do specify the paper size as 3.5 by 5. You can also print using the System dialog by clicking here. Then click on Preferences to bring up the print options. Make sure you are printing landscape and not portrait by specifying it here. And finally, make sure you specify 3.5 by 5 in the paper options size. Then click OK. Load your single 3.5 by 5 index cards into your printer and click on the Print button. Going back to the Paperwork tab, let's take a look at the paperwork for the Spotlight Cue Sheets. Here it lists the Spotlight Cue Sheets by show name. Let's look at show name A, Spotlight Cues. Every time you add or delete Spotlight Cues from the Spotlight Cue Sheet under the Cue Sheets tab, will be reflected here in the Spotlight Cue Sheets paperwork. And mousing down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen will bring up the standard print and save functions. Going back to the Paperwork tab, let's take a look at the paperwork for the Lighting Cue Sheets. Here it lists the Lighting Cue Sheets by show name. Let's take a look at show name A's Lighting Cues. Every time you add to or delete from the Lighting Cue Sheet under the Cue Sheets tab will be reflected here in the Lighting Cue Sheets paperwork. And mousing down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen will bring up the standard print and save functions. Going back to the Paperwork tab, let's take a look at the paperwork for the Deck Electrician's Cue Sheets. Here it lists the Deck Electrician's Cue Sheets by show name. Let's look at show name A's Deck Electrician Cues. Every time you add to or delete from the Deck Electrician's Cue Sheets under the Cue Sheets tab will be reflected here in the Deck Electrician's paperwork. And mousing down to the lower right-hand corner of your screen will bring up the standard print and save functions. Going back to the Paperwork tab, let's take a look at the paperwork for the rental gear. Every time you add to or delete from the rental gear list under the Vendor and Rental Gear tab will be reflected here in the rental gear paperwork.